Hi everyone, I want to talk about Ethereals and what will happen after season 24. So I think Ethereals are probably the best season theme ever so far. They're probably the best received season theme, just looking at the feedback that I get from my community, from people coming to stream, my YouTube comments, people talking about the season, people playing the season. The numbers are incredible. So it seems definitely that a lot of people are enjoying this season very much, partly because of the buffs to the monk, partly because of the Ethereals, partly because PoE. So there are definitely some factors involved, but I think everyone loves Ethereals, the way they work for the most part, and it's definitely a really cool season theme. And a lot of people are wondering what's gonna happen after this. How can Blizzard top this? What can we get? How is it gonna feel afterwards? It's gonna be terrible when we don't have them anymore, etc. So I want to talk a little bit about this and share my ideas. Now, first of all, why are Ethereals so cool? First of all, they have this D2 theme. They have this, reminiscent artwork of Diablo 2. They have these item names that people know and love, and they are just like a really cool addition to something like Diablo 3. And a very cool tribute to the upcoming Diablo 2 Resurrected release. So that alone is already amazing. And of course, we have the ability to use them in almost every single build in the game. So I think the Defeat team did a good job at taking what was there in Diablo 2 and transforming it into something that can be usable in a Diablo 3 environment. So we have these items with their 20 different stats and some cool special effects. And on top of that, they had a passive, which everyone likes. And on top of that, they have the legendary power, so I can actually use them in builds that require certain weapons, which is almost every build in the game. And on top of that, they have this huge 100% damage increase, which is kind of like the season buff in that sense. So it's definitely good to have season themes that feel impactful, that feel powerful, and that boost people a little bit so that they kind of catch up to their non-seasonal power level. So you get like a little bit of a buff for playing season that you otherwise wouldn't have on non-season, where you have many more paragons, and that kind of makes sense. And on the other side, Ethereals also make the loot hunt very interesting again. This is something that Diablo 3 has been lacking in for a long time. Essentially what people do is they farm rats all season, then they do some bounties, and then they make whatever character they want to play with their 4,000 paragons, craft a bit of gear in the cube, and they're done. And with Ethereals, you cannot do that. You have to find them, you have to play your main class, you have to get them, finding them on the ground. And every time you see one of them drop, you know it's going to be one of those 3 weapons, and it has a very good chance to roll really strong. It's always ancient, so there's always a decent chance to be usable, and you don't really need to find that many of them to get something usable. And they drop frequently enough that even with the RNG involved, the different passives, and the different legendary powers and the different roles, it's not really that crazy to get something for your build in most cases. But even so, it's amazing because it forces you to play your main class. And this is a very important part of an ARPG, where you don't just want to grind with a grinding character for grinding's sake. You want to play whatever build you want to play, or whatever class you want to play at least, and use that to farm whatever you need. The thing is that most builds can be get up pretty efficiently, pretty quickly these days, especially set-based builds usually are getting away with some non-ancients very easily, especially gloves, for example, are very often just left as non-ancients. And then all the other pieces are usually quite easy to get, chests, pants, boots, all the stuff is usually extremely easy to get with some decent ancient rolls. And you can essentially gear up most of these builds in 10 to 20 hours of game time. If you're playing LOD builds, that number increases quite a bit because everything needs to be ancient, and especially the jewelry is very hard to come by. Some weapons are incredibly difficult to get, and these kind of things. And sometimes you might want to get some crazy trifecta shoulders and some trifecta weapons and these kind of things. So that can be harder, and you might need 50 to 100 hours or so to actually gear a character if you play very efficiently. But the point stands that gearing is pretty fast, and a lot of people quit the gearing part much earlier than that anyway. So they don't even go for perfect rolls in most slots, and they just stop somewhere as soon as they have some kind of okay ancient in every slot. So this is a general problem in Diablo 3, And Ethereals alleviate that a little bit by allowing you to keep the loot more exciting, by feeling great about one of these drops, and by always having something to chase. And that is definitely a really cool part of it. I think much more exciting than the power level of the Ethereals is the fact that you can find them, and frequently enough to have a decent chance to get one that is really good as well. Now the thing is that you can't just keep the Season 24 Ethereals in the game permanently. This would be incredibly powerful. It would lead to even more power creep. We can see this season already, like every class already clearing 150 and all that stuff. So obviously that's a bit ridiculous, but I do believe that it would be a very wasted opportunity to not do anything with them. So there are a few different options here. Personally, I am much more in favor of permanent updates to the game than really like high effort season themes. While I do like the season themes that we have gotten, including this one a lot, I believe that we should every single time take something from the season theme and keep it in the game. That includes the cube seasons, that includes the environmental seasons, that includes the Ethereals. Basically every time that we spend so much time making a season theme, we should also kind of keep a little part of it. Just like we did with the LOD gem after the season 17 theme that gave us the Lawn Rings for free. That was an amazing addition to the game because it allowed a lot more builds suddenly to become like a real setup that can be played, and it allowed people faster progression on the early stages with their LOD build, and it just opened up a lot of other opportunities for people to play the game, and that was amazing. And it's really sad to see that Season 17 so far has been the only season that has been incorporated as a permanent feature in Diablo 3. With the Ethereals, there could definitely be some options here, and I believe a really cool way to keep them in the game would be to just remove their damage bonus and essentially leave them untouched otherwise. Maybe I would streamline a few things here and there, like some of them are a bit underused, some of them are a bit overused, so that could be a bit adjusted. And we can also take a look at which legendary powers can roll them. For example, on the Demon Hunter, the weapons roll quiver powers, which is absolutely pointless. On the Wizard, the weapons roll offhand powers, which is absolutely pointless. So basically, what I would do is I would just remove this 100% damage bonus from all of them. There are also these cases where you have more than 100%, like the Mangsong Lesson and the Baritza. So I would like adjust those a little bit to kind of be in the same ballpark then. So maybe the 300 here would be reduced to 100, maybe a Baritza 150 would be reduced to 25, and these kind of things. Just basically balancing it out a little bit. Because what the Ethereals also have done for Season 24 is they have created a very balanced solo and XP format meta for almost every single class. So there are some classes that still need some help, but essentially we have monks, we have demon hunters, we have crusaders, we have wizards, all being extremely good in XP farming and kind of able to mix and match. Then there's also the rats that are very competitive, and then we have the two classes that are a little bit behind, the barbarian and the witch doctor, that hopefully we'll see some other updates in the future. I think if the legendary power pool would be streamlined a little bit to only include like the meta, like juicy powers, and not really any crappy offhand powers that no one wants to get, then this would also allow Blizzard to make them a bit more rare. I wouldn't make them like super rare like primals, but I would make them maybe a bit more rare because right now they are dropping quite a lot. You can get up to 3 or 4 Ethereals an hour right now if you farm very efficiently. So that is quite a lot. And if the RNG pool is a bit smaller, I think it's fine. The good part about this is it would keep them more exciting as well, because it has an even higher chance to roll something good and be useful for one or multiple of your builds when you get one. I think the great part about removing this damage bonus from those weapons is that it keeps them in kind of a balanced power level. So some of them have some pretty crazy bonus effects, like these Bane of the Stricken type weapons here with this 10% stacking effect. So this is obviously always going to be extremely good, especially for Rift Guardian killer builds, but this is not necessarily a bad thing because Rift Guardian fights are terrible in Diablo 3, and I don't really mind killing them as fast as possible, so why not? And on the other hand, without this 100% damage bonus, these weapons wouldn't be all that crazy anymore, to the point where they are absolutely necessary for your build to really function on a decent level. Right now, Ethereals boost most builds by around 5 to up to 10 tiers in the extreme cases with Riza, for example. And with this 100% damage bonus removed, everything would be reduced by roughly 5 tiers. So most builds would get like maybe a tier or two from, you know, a bit of a boost from the passive that is like maybe half a tier, plus you have some of these other special effects, maybe have some really good stats, and it would maybe amount to something like 1 to 2 tiers in most cases, and maybe a bit more in some extra special cases where the weapon is just incredibly good. And it would be pretty much a natural step in the progression of your character, going from a non-ancient weapon to an ancient weapon, which usually is also roughly a 2-tier bonus, and then going to an ethereal, which is maybe another 1 or 2 tiers bonus. So it's not like, oh, I haven't found it yet, I can't do anything with my character. So this is kind of the problem that people have with Season 24 right now. They play and they found like there are 20 different ethereals, and none of them are actually working for their build, so they still have to run around with their crappy ancient weapon, not even this ethereal at all. So that can also feel a bit bad in that sense, especially when they become more rare. But I think that would be a really cool like addition to the game as a permanent solution, and it would keep them exciting, it would keep the loot hunt exciting, and it wouldn't power creep us very much to the point where everything just becomes too crazy. Aside from this, if Ethereals actually have to go, at least I would love for Blizzard to consider keeping some of their special effects in the game in some way. For example, this 10% stricken effect is extremely cool for some builds because it makes the flow of the game, especially while pushing, very exciting, because suddenly you actually have a chance to fight off small pulls and kill the Rift Guardian quite quickly and kill some elites off, which is something that you almost never can do on almost any build in a game. So usually, even when you have an elite pack that's like 10% HP, when you're pushing, you have to skip it if there's no more trash left at the end of the floor, because you would just waste like a minute trying to kill that last 10%, because the elites are so tanky. And effects like this definitely help out to alleviate this problem a little bit. Some of the other stuff is also interesting, like the spirit on crit on the monk weapons, for example. You have this reduced enemy damage stuff. So I think some of the stuff could definitely be baked into some new, maybe legendary amulet or legendary ring. Like imagine, for example, this consecutive hits effect on something that could replace a convention of elements for your build. A lot of people don't like convention of elements, so why not make a ring that has this effect, for example? Or maybe we have a new legendary gem that has something like a resource effect and gives you a resource on crit and maybe some other cool stuff. So there is definitely a lot of ways to include some of their special effects in very exciting ways. Or another example is the Buriza, which is extremely amazing with this freeze effect and this 100% crit chance against frozen enemies. So there is definitely something that should be kept here from those ethereals, I believe, and be baked into some gems, some items. There are a lot of cool things here that are really special to those ethereals, and it would be sad to see them go. Ultimately, we could also change how the whole system works. So maybe instead of ethereal weapons, there is some kind of ethereal consumable like a Ramladni's gift. I think in general we need to do a lot more with consumables. I actually made a video a long time ago about 30 new consumable ideas of how to improve the loot hunt, how to make it more exciting, how there could be a bit better crafting, etc. And there could also be some kind of ethereal consumable, for example, where you can make an item and upgrade it to another quality with this ethereal effect, so that maybe you add the legendary power to a weapon that previously didn't have any, like you take any, I don't know, like let's say a pick sticker, and it just gains this random legendary power of your class, plus it gains a random passive, or maybe just a passive, or maybe just one of these special effects of this stricken effect, or this damage reduction, or the crit resource effect, and this attack speed effect. So something like this could also be a pretty cool addition, I think. So in any case, I think I made my points clear. We definitely need to keep something in the game, and that is not just this season, but all the past seasons as well, and all the future seasons. I want to see something from all this effort that was put into them to stick around and slowly improve the game over time, because I think this is really what Diablo 3 needs in the end. Having a cool season theme, having a lot of hype for something is definitely amazing, but there's not really a point when we always go back to square one after every single season and not really make any improvements for the rest of the time. So this is what I want to share here. Hope you liked my thoughts. Let me know what your ideas are, maybe for this season theme or for future season themes, or how maybe some of the old ones could be included in the main game. So I would be very curious to hear that. I also had some ideas, for example, to bake like the triune rings into a new pylon, or maybe even the season 21 theme into a pylon or stuff like that. So I think just these little ideas can maybe help the devs to find some inspiration and do something with them. So hope you liked this video, and I'll see you guys next time.